Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Strategic Narrative Underground session number 8. My name is Guillaume Wiatr. I'm the principal and founder of MetaHelm. MetaHelm is a strategy consulting firm. We specialize in strategic storytelling. We help CEOs, executive teams, entrepreneurs, founders, creators unlock new levels of growth, profitability, and engagement with their community by helping them build a strategic narrative. Every Thursday, I welcome you to this free session to walk you through some of the new ideas that I'm putting in a book manuscript that I call the Strategic Narrative Pattern Language. I talk for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we have a conversation, and it's a pleasure, always a delight to engage with you. So thank you so much for coming back, for those who've been now regulars to the sessions. Today, we're going to talk about the origin, today, we're going to talk about, of course, the product story. This is one of the 4 stories from my strategic narrative model. And I am going to share some visuals with you to make this very, very clear. There you go. So the product story, as I said, is one of the 4 stories from my strategic narrative model. Previously, we went over the origin story, which is really about how you see the opportunities that others don't out there in your market. We then moved into the opportunity story, which is, where is this new product, this new idea taking us? Where are you taking us? We then talked about the perspective story, which is a chance for you to disagree with the common wisdom and maybe some of the dogmas that people are attached to. It's a way to differentiate as well. If you have questions, if you want to know more about those 3 first stories, there are recordings that I posted on YouTube, my YouTube channel, about these that go over them in great detail. And today we're going to focus on the product story. So what is it that I mean? What do I really mean by product story? Well, in very simple term, I've noticed that great narratives are always inspired from people, leaders who see something new possible, but they are most importantly enabled by tools. So here's an example from our history here in the Northwest, and with the example of the gold rush. As some of you might know, Seattle played a very, very big role in the end of the 19th century with the Klondike gold rush. And this is what the opportunity looks like. The gold rush could make you very rich. To these days, we counted about 100,000 people who traveled to Alaska with the hope of good fortune. And that's what it actually looked like. It was a very dangerous, very scary journey. You could run into so many different risks and hurdles and die. It was a lot of hard work. It was working in the cold, in the wet, but it seemed like the opportunity was really worth it, because not only you could get rich, but you could also along the way make new friends and find new opportunities. As a matter of fact, the people who benefited maybe the most out of the gold rush, out of this new opportunities, were the people who would outfit the gold, the pioneers. We provide with tools, and these are people in Seattle who open shop to provide the people going to the Klondike with everything they needed. In fact, the city of Seattle had established a mandatory rule that everybody going to Alaska had to carry a certain set of tools and a certain amount of food with them. So that's what I mean by tools enable new narratives. The new narrative of the gold rush was, I can live a different life. I can be rich in another manner than just working in a previous occupation. So I'm making this very, very short, but this is really what I mean by the product story. Initially, product, my narrative model starts with this question: how did you start this business? So now I'm going back to this idea of you as a business owner, an entrepreneur, maybe a founder or inventor, an innovator of something that will hopefully bring business opportunities. So people want to know this: how did you start? And that's the origin story. Then comes the next question: where are you taking us? And that's the opportunity story. How will we get there? What is your philosophy on how we can get to this, to this new promised land? Literally promised land in the case of the gold rush. And finally, what will we use actually to get there? So as you can see here, the model that I'm proposing here answers those 4 questions kind of metaphorically speaking. I'm using the metaphor of travel, of a journey, but really this model is about growth, is about creating growth, not just for your business, but also for your community around you. But let's stick with your business for a moment. The strategic narrative, the purpose of a strategic narrative is really about defining your own growth strategy. So the first question, how did you start, answers, the question that people have: what opportunity did you see that other ignored? The next question, where are you taking us, answers the question of how do you inspire your customers to adopt a new approach to realize this new opportunity? I use many examples in the previous sessions, and one that comes to mind is the example of Volvo. Volvo wanted at some point to reposition their business, and they thought that positioning the business around safety was a good bet. And it proved to be right, the right move. The perspective story answers the question: well, how do you challenge the wisdom that others accept as truth, so you rally forces that no one else can? And I give you another example last week with the example of Mud Pizza, who prides itself to not only serve food, but serve the community in a very specific form. Mud Pizza is giving employment opportunities to those who need them the most. Let's go over the function of the product story. The product story makes it easy for people to reach this opportunity. It makes it tangible. There is often a very practical product, something that you can sometimes hold in your hands. If it's the case of a service, the service maybe has an experience, has a process, has a set of steps. The third aspect that you want to consider is to make your product story gradual. Not everybody is ready to go to the gold rush, to go to Alaska and buy the full set of things that you have to sell them. But maybe they want to also be involved in the narrative, maybe in an indirect way. And I'll show you an example to be very, very specific here. The product story makes things actionable. So if you feel like you're in your business, it's hard to get buy-in into the new way of working that you have. Look maybe around, how do you call people to action, and how do you make things actionable? You'll notice that I split make it actionable and call people to action, because I think that these are two different things. Make it actionable is really in the tangible sense of things. It's what you're going to do. Call people to action is more communications oriented. So I always make that difference when I think about a narrative, because most people will think that a narrative is just communications. It's not only communications, it's maybe 20% communications, but a narrative is also behavior, cultural, product related, decision related, and so on. To illustrate what a product story is, I have actually a story for you. And I have a question. For a few minutes, we're going to travel to Nepal. This is one of the beautiful canyons of Nepal. There are thousands of them. Nepal is has a lot of mountains, as you probably know. And so let's imagine that you live in Nepal. You're a business owner in Nepal, and you decided to start a business that helps travelers cross the canyon. From one bank to the other. So my question to you is, how do you cross a canyon in Nepal? So you like to invite you to give this some thoughts, and maybe unmute your microphone and tell me what could be the options there.
Yeah, you can build some roads.
Some roads or ropes? I couldn't hear very well.
Roads and bridges.
Okay, so roads, we can build a bridge. What else what are the options do we have?
Helicopter.
We can take a helicopter. Great. I didn't think about this one, but sure.
Donkeys.
Donkeys.
A gondola on a cable.
Gondola on a cable. Okay.
Oh, I would like that.
How would you like that, Ling?
That's because that's not just transportation. That's also adventure.
Right. There is adventure. So now we're adding another component to the service here. What else? Come on, you can go for it. There are other options there.
You could hire a guide.
Okay, what would the guide do?
Lead you through the path, I guess.
Right. So maybe the guide would say, well, we're going to have to walk, but we're going to have to take a different path. Maybe, walk around the canyon, or maybe, go down and then climb back up. That's a good idea. All right. So to figure this out, there's probably an infinite amount of solutions, and there are solutions that we have not discovered yet. How about teletransportation?
Wow, that's something from the future.
Something from the future, right? Doesn't exist quite yet, but I know some people are working on it. But it's in the realm of eventually the possibilities. I just listed a few of them, but you guys were very creative this morning. I was fishing for some of these answers. Use a footbridge. You can jump to, you can walk down and climb up. You could travel around. One of the most creative solutions I've seen, I came across on social media, and I want to show it to you because it's pretty different. It's pretty interesting. So can you guys see my screen? Yes. All right. This is what it looks like to cross a canyon sometimes in Nepal. You're traveling in a bus, and then the bus has to go through the canyon. So we just hook the bus on a zip line, and we zip line the bus through the canyon. So let me play the video here. There you go.
Oh my God.
That feels dangerous.
Yeah.
There you go. Bon voyage. See you on the other end. That feels dangerous. It felt dangerous. You want to watch it again?
No.
I would not be an early adopter of that.
And there's only single cable. There's no safety cable, I see.
There's nothing there. There's not. It's only safety cable. There you go. So that's one of the options, right? So
I guess you have to use what's at your disposal, huh?
Right. You guess you have to do what you have to do. You have to be creative. So I wanted to show you this video because you came up with very possible answers, and then in thinking about this topic, I didn't think about that, but I was kind of surprised to see that this is actually possible. And I want to show you a model to frame your product story with a continuum. It's a model that I talked already a bit about in a previous session when I was discussing the idea of whether you're trying to optimize a way to work a service or a product that already exists, or if you're trying to transform. And some people will say, well, disrupt. Here in the example of crossing the canyon on the zip line, it's quite disruptive. It's actually very fast. The bus crosses it in probably I think the video is like 15 seconds. It's a lot faster than having to unload the bus and then, or even go on a helicopter, like I think you suggested, Patricia. But I want you to think of your product story in terms of a trade-off. So here is the model. There is, as you can see, there is this axis from left to right. On the left, you have your safer, more conventional solutions. They take more time. They're longer. It takes longer to cross the canyon, but it's also stress-free. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's really fast, but it's also very scary. And I think, Patricia, when you saw this video, you said, "Oh, this is stressful. This is scary." I wouldn't want to be, Josh, you said, I wouldn't want to be the early adopter of this solution. It's there's no safety net. There's only one cable, as Ling said. And yeah, that's a more risky approach, but the reward is also, the value is also much higher. So again, on the far end of the spectrum, you can think about you can travel around. It's going to take you days probably to go all the way to the end of the canyon and then come back and climb the mountain again, but it's very safe. I also put a jetpack here because I was thinking, oh, maybe we could take a jetpack put a jetpack on your back and then fly up to the mountain. I want to turn to your own businesses. And I'd like you to start thinking about, number one is, the opportunity that you are suggesting to your customers, to your community, and how you help them get there. You probably have a philosophy, and then this philosophy translates into a very tangible way to work. So as we can see here, those options, those solutions here are tied to a set of value that makes the story completely different. If I'm on the left side of the spectrum, the long but stress-free, what I probably value is safety. I don't value speed as much as if I am on the opposite side of the spectrum, where I value speed, but I don't value safety. That's the opposite, right? That's the trade-off that you have to do. So in framing your product story, here is an interesting idea which helps you be very specific, call people to action in a very compelling way, which is to think about what is it that you provide and what is it that you don't provide. So maybe it sounds like we help you do, we deliver XYZ, real estate, design, marketing, engineering, electric vehicles, better food, whatever it is, without this other thing that we used to have to deal with in the conventional method that we used to have. So in that case, we help you cross the canyon without having to wait. Might be one of the versions for your service if you're in Nepal and you're helping travelers cross the canyon with the zip line right there. So this is a model that I have explored and practiced, numerous times. And every time I come back to this set of 5 design considerations for your product story. I want to repeat them again. The product story should make it easy for your customers or your community to attain your opportunity. So in the case of the zipline, it's easy. You don't even have to hop off the bus. You stay in the bus, we hook the bus on the zipline, and there you go. It's tangible. You have to be able to demonstrate concretely how this is going to happen. And this is a hurdle. This is a challenge that I face when I help inventors, creators. A lot of people in the technical world have this problem. They need to prototype things, but it's hard for them to demonstrate how it's going to work and make it tangible because it doesn't exist yet. So at the beginning, really what you're relying on is your perspective story. It has to be gradual because you may want to think about a set of options for your customers to get to the same destination, but with different trade-offs. It makes it actionable. You know what to do. Here are the steps. Show up, hook the bus, throw it through the zip line, and arrive at your destination. And it calls people to action. The question is now, do you believe in your product? Do you believe in what you do? The more you are going to call people to action, the more confidence people around you are going to be. They're going to sense that what you have to offer can really change their life in a good way. I always like to do what I always like to do is to leave you with a concrete tool. I call it a basic story archetype. And here is what it could look like. Our product lets you insert action, value proposition, outcome without insert here the trade-off. What is it that you leave behind? What is it that you're not going to provide? Another version here is if you're a solopreneur, or if you have if you're working for, as a freelance, maybe my service enables you to, without, so just a slight difference in words. There are so many other things to say about the product story. It's a really vast topic. One of the things that I always see is that people like to start with that story out of the four. That's always where our head goes first. And it may work if you are in a market that is very common. It might not work if you've decided to offer something more innovative. What you have to do is start with the origin story, the opportunity story, and the perspective story, because they provide context to why your product. I want to end there and open it for question and see where do you think on this continuum your guys' business is situated. So that would be my question for you to get our conversation started today.
Yeah, I will say in my business, we have certain kind of work that is more methodical. It's also the more expensive work. And so that stays toward the travel around the footbridge range. We have some work in the middle that is less exploring needed. Maybe they're an existing client, that's somewhere in the middle. And then we have really fast work, like this needs to be updated or resized or reprinted, and that's jetpack work.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not scary, I guess.
I think it does sort of depend on who you're marketing to, because if you, like in the case of Nepal, if you're marketing to people who are wanting to have an adventure and see scenery and all of that, then you want them to go slow. But if you are marketing to people who have some kind of task to get done on the other side of the gorge, then they need to get there like immediately. So judging, like figuring out who your client base is another important aspect of this.
Right.
Yeah. I want to add one comment. So probably in Nepal's case, it's not the customer's choice. They are forced to do that because they don't have other choice, or they cannot afford other choices. So I think in this case, it's not just you think from your product perspective. You also need to take care of the customers, their resource and their restrictions.
Yeah, I love those comments. It sounds like what you're saying is this work if we always focus on what the customer wants to accomplish. So we have to be really customer focused, customer centric here.
Yes. What I also want to add is in this case, probably any option they will take because they don't have other choices.
Right. Okay. So maybe that's where the road ends. There's no other way. So that's the only way. This reminds me of a pitch that I have in a product by Elon Musk, where Elon Musk launches the battery pack for houses. And that's the way he frames it, by saying we don't have a choice. We need to reduce CO2 emissions on the planet or we're all going to die. And our only option is to use alternative energies, not fossil fuel. And so we have to use, one of them is obviously there is the sun. Now the problem is, how do we store that energy? So he frames it as that's our only path to survival. It sounds different, it sounds impossible, but that's the only way we can do this. All right, these are great. So remember that that story is part of a system. That's why I call the narrative a system of stories. The product story is all about the product, but can only be right if you frame it in conjunction with the three other stories that give context, that say who the customer is, what are we trying to achieve, what are the stakes, what do we have to lose or win, and what is the philosophy around what we're trying to achieve. To your point earlier, if the philosophy is we want to enjoy the scenery, in the example of Nepal, if we want to enjoy the scenery, it's going to be a completely different product story than if we want to get there fast. And if we're not very risk adverse, we're adventurers. We actually like it. It's actually fun to go on a zip line in a bus. So the big point here is that I chunked these, in those sessions that we had together to make it digestible and systematic, and I systematized that. But in reality, they are all interconnected and all weaved in together. So I presented to you the science, but really behind it, it's an art. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for tuning in again today. I hope to see you next week again for another Strategic Narrative Underground session. À bientôt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Guillaume.